This program is proudly sponsored by Datec Limited.
Good night, Papua New Guinea. I'm Malcolm Wyra and welcome to another edition of Infocus. Now, as we look towards celebrating 50 years of independence, we acknowledge the industries that have contributed to the economic development of the country. Two of such is the mining and petroleum industries. Joining us for discussions is Mr. Richard Kessman, OBE, Senior Vice President of PNG Corps. Mr. Kessman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Appreciate the invitation.
Firstly, Mr. Kessman, what is PNG Corps?
Okay. PNG Corps, the acronym stands for Papua New Guinea Chamber of Resources and Energy, and we've used PNG Corps just for ease of reference.
Now, Mr. Kessman, what role does the PNG Corps play in the PNG mining and petroleum sectors?
PNG Corps, perhaps, Malcolm, I should just explain to our viewers tonight that previously we were known as the PNG Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, and we chose to change our name, to modernize our name to a Chamber of Resources and Energy, and it's in line with the modern language of the time. So effectively we represent we're a chamber that represents members of our industry, both in mining and petroleum, as well as service providers of the industry. So we're all together in the chamber.
Okay. Recently, there's major reforms happening, particularly around national content. Could you clarify the concept of national content and why it is important in 2025?
Okay. Yes. So, firstly, national content is a concept and a practice that has been practiced by the industry for many, many decades. It's not a new concept, and the requirement for national content is applied right across the globe, where international companies operate. So, be it in Africa, be it in Latin America, Asia, in parts of Europe. The requirement for national content is quite consistent. So national content covers three basic pillars. The first pillar is suppliers, and both of service and supplies. So it's important for our viewers to appreciate that national content is a requirement everywhere in the world, not just Papua New Guinea. So it covers the three pillars I was starting to talk about. Is the suppliers, and that's suppliers of goods and services. Within that sphere is our local content or landowner participation. I'll come back to that. The second part is our workforce development, and that's the other important pillar. So the importance of training wherever we operate in the world, including Papua New Guinea, to develop workforce to work in our respective projects. And then the third pillar is our contribution to the socio-economic impact of the country, particularly in the areas of health and education, some infrastructure that we participate in as well. So this is the wide area of national content. And what's important is that we need to ensure that we partner with the host government to ensure that we collaborate to try and deliver a lot of the various parts of national content. So in a discourse in Papua New Guinea, national content, our people think that national content is just landowner participation. That's a key component of any resource project, but importantly, it covers the landowner companies from our project area footprint, plus businesses in the province and businesses in the country. So it's very important that we look at the wholesome approach to that. So once again, supply of goods and services, then there's workforce development, and then there's what we do in that socio-economic space of health education, and other services that we get involved in.
I understand that the industry is currently making efforts to promote national content. From the PNG Corps' perspective, what interventions are you implementing?
Okay, so the government of Papua New Guinea recently developed a policy. First, there was announcements of national content at national level, and the policy in different sectors is still under development. But the petroleum sector, under the Department of Petroleum, were the first authority to issue a specific national content policy. So it's policy at this stage, not in legislation, and at the behest of the government. That might come at a later stage. But the policy is very clear, and the policy seeks to enhance participation of our businesses and our people. We certainly are supportive of the policy and the concepts that it has, but as the Chamber representing our members, we are engaging with, in this case, Department of Petroleum, plus with Department of Commerce and Industry. We're engaging in a lot of discussion on how this policy could be well articulated, and it's in our interest as well to promote to our members what the policy is all about. So we're taking a very collaborative approach on the national content. And there needs to be a lot of work in the way we articulate what it is. As I said, if you ask the man in the street, he will say national content is 100% for landowners, for the resource owners. That is not what national content is. And by nature, we are extracting, whether it be minerals or oil or gas, from very, very remote areas of our country where there's no business, there's no opportunity for our people to have engaged in any form of business. So the businesses don't exist in our project area. So it's in our interest to develop landowner businesses, and we spend a lot of time and effort investing in developing that. But it's important to appreciate that a lot of other businesses in the towns of our country, Lae, Rabaul, Mount Hagen and Goroka and Port Moresby are utilised in these project areas. So we take a more national approach to the national content discussion.
A notable discussion point is around the matter of production sharing agreements. It's quite a topic that most Papua New Guineans are not aware of. Could you highlight and clarify for our viewers?
Yes, that's an important question, and I'm glad you've asked that question, Malcolm. So the prerogative of any state is to introduce legislation, introduce policy and legislation. So this is not the business of the industry. The government has a view and wants to introduce legislation in the mind of the government to increase both equity, but more importantly, increase revenue and take from a project. So we've been involved in these discussions with the state. With respect to production sharing in the mining sector, we've spent a lot of our time explaining to government that these production sharing contracts are not for mining. These were introduced in various countries for petroleum and gas projects, and that's the area. And we have been discussing with government legislation in the mining sector that will enable both the mining companies and the government to optimize the development of any resource. With respect to the petroleum sector, the production sharing contract fiscal regime is utilized in different countries. Our neighbors, such as Indonesia and Malaysia, do that, and other parts of the world in Africa, in Latin America, work under a production sharing regime. We're in discussions with the state at the moment. For example, with Indonesia, they started with a traditional production sharing, and then they realized they've had to reform the law. and then to make it one conducive to investors, and importantly, that the state is able to manage and administer a production sharing contract, as well as Malaysia have modified that. So basically, for our viewers' benefit, Malcolm, if we have a production sharing, and on a project, on any project in our country, so effectively, the state engages by contract a developer, like Total Energies, like ExxonMobil, like Santos. So the state says, here's the resource, now we will contract the company to extract that. So you need these contractual arrangements. So the state will hold the license, not us. So as a project, we will work and extract that, and then when the revenue comes back, the state will allow us to reimburse all our expenses that we've had before. The advantage of the state is that it doesn't have to go and get financing. But we, as the operator, will get our money first from the production of whether it be oil or gas. And then there's formulas, and then then the state will start to pick up its share. So we are the contractor of the state. The state has the resource, gives us the license, and we contract. So that's what our people are not, that we haven't had a chance to basically explain these sort of things to the public of Papua New Guinea. So, and therefore, we can work, international companies like mine, we can work in a production sharing environment, or what we call concessions, tax and concessions legislation like we have here. But what's important for our listeners to appreciate is, like any business, we have a minimum percentage of what we call rate of return. So be it in a production sharing fiscal regime, or in the regime that we have now, we want to earn a minimum percentage at the end of the day. So we have to work so we achieve that objective. We're not going to work in an environment where we don't have a return, and a return to our minimum standards. So this is a conversation we're having with state, and we're saying to state what's important is a discussion on what are the terms of the contract, and get the state to appreciate that the state, we're the contractor. The state is the principal of the contractor. When we start to sell the oil or the gas, we, including the state, the money comes in for each what we call cargo. We take our money for the operations, not all of it in the first instance, but we take our money first, and the rest comes back for the state. So this is an important conversation to be had. There are many countries, if they run this properly, it's for the benefit of the country and the people, absolutely. So one is not better or worse than the other. A lot of it is in the detail and how it's administered. But I want our people to appreciate we're a contractor to the state. That's why it's called production sharing contract. It's not like now. So like now with PNG LNG, ExxonMobil are the operator. They have other partners like Santos, JX Nippon, Kumul Petroleum, and MRDC. So these are the partners. Exxon run that. So the business picks up all the costs, including operating costs, sells the gas comes back into a main account, and then distributed. So in PNG LNG's case, for example, their priority is to pay the loan off. And then the balance left over, they pay the costs, operations, and then the balance goes into the account of their shareholders. All going well in 2026, potentially 2027, the loan for PNG LNG will be finished, and therefore the state will receive a greater amount of money, where right now the state is paying off a loan.
Now, Mr. Kasman, to what extent is the agenda of environment, sustainability and governance, to what extent is it important for the PNG core?
for the PNG core and our members, Malcolm, it's right center of it. So all companies, particularly a lot of the international companies that have licenses in our country, both in mining and petroleum, are fully cognizant with the requirements of ESG, and indeed they're part of our practice. What's important to note is our responsibility and our accountability to the environment, to the social side, and to support the economy that hosts our project is very much part of how we operate. I want to say that the laws of Papua New Guinea are very strong. The Mining Act, the Oil and Gas Act, the Environment Act of Papua New Guinea is a very strong and robust act. And I don't want our viewers to think that we have weaker laws. We have strong laws. And at the same time, we as individual companies also have minimum standards. And then companies that are from Europe, like Total Energies, companies like Exxon from the States, have also their requirements, conventions that their countries subscribe to, which means that wherever they are, they must subscribe to these high standards. So it's very much part of it. We incorporate that into both our operational work in mining or petroleum, plus in our community development, in our interactions with the communities, and how we operate with the environment. And lastly, on that important point, if we don't comply with the requirements under that whole area, we will not be able to get funding from international financiers and credit agencies to fund our projects in Papua New Guinea. And if we're very poor on that, in spite of the big balance sheets of the companies that operate in our country, we will not be able to get funding. So it's front and center of how we operate in Papua New Guinea.
Now, Mr. Kasman, just over a month ago, PNG co-hosted the PNG Investment Conference in Sydney. What were your thoughts on the event as a whole?
It was an amazing success. I think it started before we went to Sydney, and our conference opened on actually it was the 7th or 8th of December. And with the cooperation of the government and the support of the government, which encouraged our members to attend. So it's important we acknowledge the Prime Minister, Honourable James Marape, and his ministries for supporting us in that regard. And in fact, were present for the full extent of the program. For our investors and our members, we're very, very pleased that they were able to showcase in the more traditional conference environment, exhibitions, and learn a lot of things in the exchange that was taking place in the conferences. And at the same time, which is a key bonus, we're able to have both ministers and the bureaucracy available. And the feature of this last December was a lot of our authorities from IPA, immigration, customs were also present. So investors that are in Papua New Guinea and prospective investors were able to engage with our people. And at the same time, we're able to see presentations by both mining and petroleum sector on the status of their exploration and make decisions on how they should invest. We also had financiers there. We had people from different countries turning up to have appreciation of what Papua New Guinea has to offer in mining and petroleum as well.
Now, finally, Mr. Kasman, how is PNG Co highlighting what its members are doing in promoting national content?
It's a good question. So we hold an annual event. We started in late 2 years ago, and this will be our third one that we're going to hold in Port Moresby. We call it CAN Connects. So CA for Community Affairs, NC for National Content, and the importance of us connecting with everybody and building that network. So we're going to host a one week both conference exhibitions here in Port Moresby, primarily around the University of Papua New Guinea. We're also going to use the Sir John Guy Stadium. so we can have a better reach to our general public. So we'll have one for members and those delegates who register, but this year is going to be different, where we want our members to host exhibitions, show their businesses, show what they do in the country, both in a mining and petroleum perspective, plus their community relations, their community development in the country. And this is not just for foreign companies. A feature of this, and we're going to give that platform to our landowners. Very, very important that our landowners are featured at CanConnex, and they have a voice there, and they can express themselves in a lot of ways. On that point, we've given a platform, for example, to the Autonomous Region of Bougainville. It's been attended by the President and their ministers, so they get in an appreciation of as they develop into what they need to do, both in the mining, petroleum sector, plus, of course, the interaction, community relations, community development, etc. So an important platform. We want that. We want it to go to the public. At the university, we're looking to engage with our students. Students have a very important voice. Plus, we obviously are looking for people who maybe, young people who want to make a career in our industries. So there's multiple objectives which we're achieving, and we want to make that better in 2025.
Mr. Richard Castman, OBE, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Malcolm, and once again, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak to our viewers across Papua New Guinea. Thank you.
Well, viewers, that's all the time we have for this edition of Infocus. Do join us again next week, Monday, on our regular time slot of 7 p.m. Till then, bye for now.
This program was proudly sponsored by Daytech Limited.